Everybody to the special meeting of August 12th, 2024. This is a joint meeting with the Town Council and the Board of Education. And can we have roll call for the council, please?
Councilor Sakala. Here. Councilor Crisati.
Here.
Councilor Hendrickson.
Here.
Councilor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Mangini is absent. Councilor Nasuda.
Here.
Mayor Nelson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pisner.
Here.
Councilor Santinella.
Here.
And Councilor Ungary.
Here.
9 members are present, 1 is absent.
And can we have the board members just introduce themselves? Who's present? We'll start with Tina.
Tina LeBlanc, Board of Ed.
Charlotte Riley, Board of Ed. I got Scott Ryder, Amanda Pickett, Dr. Callinan, Gina Cree, and virtually is Janet Cushman.
Okay, welcome, Janet. And can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And then we'll just roll right into it. So number 2 on the agenda is the Board of Ed forensic audit update. The Town Council, basically, I guess I'm looking for a motion to go out for an RFP to start getting ideas of what this is going to cost the town. And then also what we are expecting to get out of the audit, what years we're going to go back and stuff like that. But we've got to start the process at some point. We said we were going to, and we know the wheels of government work slow. So I'd like to get this started. Even the Board of Education, they're sitting here. If they have anything that they would like looked at also, because to be honest, it seems like a few of them were kind of caught off guard with the shortage, and they're sitting board members. They want to make sure this doesn't happen again and find out how it happened to begin with. So, how you guys want to proceed, but I'm ready to go out for an RFP. Let's start getting proposals from companies and see what it's going to cost us. Thoughts? Councilman Santinella.
So we've been throwing around the term forensic audit, and I have some sense of what that is. I think we need to be clear and realistic of what actually we're gonna get at the end. I'm not sure I can articulate for anybody here the difference between the audit that the Board of Ed does in the normal course of its business, as we do, and a forensic audit, and what the nuances of those things are. So I think for the public's benefit, I think it would be helpful if we all understand exactly what the end result is. And I'm not sure if it's a more, I'm not an accountant, so I don't know exactly what the difference between the two are. It is a term that we've used, and I'm not sure that that's the right term. But I think we could use some help really helping define what the parameters of the project are. I think everybody's going to be relieved when the audit, whatever form it is done. But I think we just need to be clear in putting together this proposal that we understand what we're going to be getting at the end. And that's my initial thoughts here. Happy to have further discussion.
So along those lines, I agree with you 100%. And I've had a meeting with John Wilcox, and people are under the assumption that the Board of Ed does an audit every single year. That is not correct. The town of Enfield does an audit every single year, and they just audit the big issues with the Board of Education. They do not have an audit like the town does. So the forensic audit part of the RFP should explain the situation that happened and why it happened. And that's the question is, why did this happen? were they solvent at the end of 22-23 and 23-24? If they weren't, how did they carry it over? Or did they carry it over? Did they use other funds? But how did we get to this point? That's what we told the taxpayers we were going to find out. But to dive in and to investigate every single little nut and bolt of the Board of Education, it's unrealistic. And that's what a forensic audit is it's more, you go to a particular issue that you're looking for and they address that issue instead of the entire budget. And they have to determine how far they have to go to get to the root of the problem, because that's what we don't know. We don't want to say, 23 or 22-23, because what if they find out in 22 or 21 when they took over, they were 10 million short? Well, the problem exists before then, and to see the whole picture, you've really got to just tell them what the problem was, how did it happen, and how can you tell us to prevent it from happening again. And I think we let the experts tell us what they need to look at, because like you said, I agree with you. I wouldn't even know where to start looking. So, go ahead.
So I would think it might be more helpful for us to have a discussion at some point with people who are actually going to conduct this to help us make sure that we're asking the right questions. I don't want to make any assumptions about anything, whether this is a process issue, whether this is a timing issue, whether I just, there are so many variables that got us to this place that most of which I see as uncontrollable impacts on the Board of Ed. And there are some things that were potentially just not communicated properly. Like there are so many variables. So I think before we get too far down the road, we need to be sure we're asking the right questions. And again, I am not an expert in this area, and I'm uncomfortable. I'm happy kind of going down this road, but I think we need to get ourselves smarter about what questions we should be asking and what the output of that needs to look like. And I don't think we're totally there. I think we understand we have a problem. It was a significant problem. We want to try to avoid it from happening again. But all of those other variables, I'm not sure we really have a firm grasp on. And I think we all want the same result. I just want to make sure that we go about getting the answer the right way.
John,
we're on the same page. I know we are.
1,000%. And that's why I'm not saying go out to bid to have somebody bid this audit. I'm saying put an RFP out. Let's get the people who know their job to come in, because you're correct. I don't have the questions either. So let's get 3 or 4 different companies that explain to us how they go about finding it. I think all we really need to do is address what the problem was, and we want to know how it came about. If you're correct and this just evolved, people want to know at what point did it evolve, because it's not fair to blame one side or the other, because we don't know that. And people are making speculations. And so having this company come in and tell us, and we listen to 4 different ones, we may get ideas from Bob's company and Gina's company and yours, and go with Marie and tell them we want to include. But none of us sitting here, I don't think any of us sitting here really, I will speak for myself, I don't have the knowledge to ask the questions to get to the bottom of this. So I want the RFP to get the professionals in the door to start. And let's see what they come up with, and then we can make a decision on how we want to move forward from there. But doing nothing, we lied to the people. And I don't want them to think that. Like, I make it perfectly clear now, the meeting that was canceled was not canceled because of one party or the other, or certain people trying to cover things up, or the audit. It's summertime. We all agreed we were taking the month off, And it's hard to get all these people together with the Board of Education. Charlotte and I worked very hard to try to get the people together. John, you and I had a conversation and something slipped through, and it's all good. We're here now. So all I want to do is get the RFP proposal together. So maybe the September 1st meeting, Chris can have it and present it to us. You know, this is what we're going to ask the committee, the companies to look into. And if we're good with the RFP, he sends it out. Let's see who answers it, and then interview them. We got nothing to lose.
Yeah, so we're going out to look for an accounting firm. That's who you're, a firm to conduct an audit of some sort and to help us clarify the questions we want them to ask and to have them help us clarify our questions for the project that we want them to do. That's what we're, am I understanding that right? No.
No, I don't agree with all that, but
Oh.
I'll let you speak. Go ahead.
Honestly, I could use your help here. I'd love to hear your perspective because I just want to make sure that we're clear.
I don't want to tell a professional how to do their job, because if they don't do it right, it's on us. I
That's
want
correct.
them to tell us how they're going to do their job.
Yeah, I don't want to hire a professional to tell them how to do their job. That would be counterintuitive.
Correct.
But I want to make sure that that they are telling us the questions that need to be asked and answered. That's my point. And I think the public needs to understand what the questions are and what they're going to get out of this. And so it's clear from the beginning. And just, I would like to just comment on the last meeting for everybody's benefit. That was canceled largely because I was not attentive to who was on the emails that were being circulated. I thought, as most of the times, the entire council is copied on emails when we're trying to schedule meetings. In that particular case, everybody was not, so I was responding and waiting for other people, and I did not communicate to my caucus about that date. So I take some responsibility for that, and I apologize, and I've apologized to you, and there was no grand conspiracy on our part that meeting got canceled. So that is floating out there still. That is not what happened.
That's why I cleared it
Fine,
up right
and I
off the
appreciate
bat,
that.
John.
So, okay, thank you.
All set? Marie?
Oh, Mike has something.
No, you had first, then Mike.
I have to say I agree. I do think we need to do a forensic audit. I think the only way to get it started is to do an RFP. Once we see who comes forward, then we can choose who we think will do the best job. It's no different than hiring any other attorney or anything else that we're going to have for the town. I agree, too. I don't know how to do a forensic audit. But I do think every one of us up here is looking for the same thing, and that's when it happened, how it happened, to make sure that it never happens again.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess I'm just not clear on the process here. If we're going, do we need a resolution to go to bid? Yes. Right? So again, we should have a resolution here. I agree, this should be in September. And I think, John, to your point, you're right. I mean, I think people, a vision of what a forensic audit versus an audit, I mean, an audit's an audit, and if you've ever been through one, you know exactly what happens in an audit. And the point, I think, of the audit here, and I'm just speaking for myself, is at the end, there's improvement in cash procedure, right? Look, we can sit here and argue who did what, but the bottom line, there was an error in cash procedures that need to be documented so people can follow, no matter who's in charge, no matter who's running the show, no matter what superintendent's there, what not. That's when an audit comes out, is when you go through it. If you've been in your line of work, at the end, you take it on the chin for some things maybe you thought you were doing right, and you say, oh, that's a pretty good idea, and then you build it into your procedures so you don't do it again, and now that's the point of the audit. If folks think there's some sort of investigation, that's not handled by an auditor. If folks felt there was something else that went on, then that's a police matter. So this is, okay, you come out of an audit. The point is, oh, man, we didn't think of that. Okay, we should be doing this. We should be, like this meeting, if I was an auditor, I would be recommending we do this every month. Because, again, the public has a right, and then actually every elected official has a right to know exactly where the money is and why. Okay, why was what was the procedure in the past? Why didn't it work for whatever reason, and how do we fix it? And we document it. Now it's a document. It's part of your policy. The board has policies, 2 pages worth, 100 policies. Now it becomes part of their policy for their finance committee, and it's all documented. It's all in public. The council knows this. We may even have to change some of our procedures, maybe how we interact with each other. Maybe our finance department should work differently with your finance department. Those things will come out of an audit if done correctly. And I think, but we have to give some direction in an RFP. We can't just say, go out to an accounting firm and do an audit. We have to give some direction. And I'm not saying we're all experts or anything, but one of them for me is, how do we improve our communication between the town and the council and the Board of Ed? When does things need to be escalated? When, okay, maybe you're used to getting a grant, a month later you have your $1 million, maybe again, just using round numbers. Say you have 70 million in your fund, but you've spent 72 million, but you know you're going to get the other 2 million next month, and that's how you've always done it. However, next month rolls around and you still don't have that $2 million. How does that get escalated? Who's the chain of command? Then how does it get to the board so the board can talk about it in public and vice versa? There, I think what the audit is very effective, and it'll be able to give everyone, including the public, okay, this is how we budget. Here's where we can improve. And if this happens, this was how it gets escalated. And I think that's what's missing, and that's what an audit can come out of. And I think, but we have to give a little bit of that direction, and just can't say, hey, because they're going to say, I think the current audit, who audit our books now, they probably already have, that group probably has some ideas on how to do the board if they actually did it similarly, following the generally accepted accounting principles, which the board doesn't have to follow per law. So, so there's some things there that you can already buy in without spending a tremendous amount of taxpayer money, but still getting a good result. And again, the end goal is to improve, so to the point it doesn't happen again, no matter who's in charge. So it shouldn't matter who's in charge, who's the superintendent, who's the assistant superintendent, who's the town manager, who's the mayor, whatever. It should be seamless, and it should be written, it should be documented. We should know about it as the council, and the board should have it in their policy and procedure. And I think you can actually do that and craft a couple, I think John probably, I don't want to put John on the spot, but I think, John, I think for an RFP, you would have a good idea on like 5, 6 basic questions we should have that we'd like to see from an audit. And so then that crafts the cost of the audit accordingly. Because I think if we're too open-ended, I work in business, folks are going to be bidding the moon and the stars and charging us outrageous money for something we may not need. So I think we do have to give a little direction, and I think we need a resolution. Wish it was here right now, but if we have to do it September, that's fine. Or we can just give a consensus to start the RFP, that's fine. But I agree, we have to do it. And I think it should be, when we come out of this, improvement, how do we learn? And again, because not everyone's been through an audit, and if you have, you understand at the end result, it can actually be, yes, you're probably going to get told some things you've done incorrectly, but it's also, hey, now it's documented and we follow, and now you're actually listening to someone who's taking an outside look on how you manage your business. And again, everyone in the business world goes through audits all the time, so this is something I think that is really healthy, in my opinion, and we can actually learn a lot to help everybody. So again, we don't get to the point where we got to, and there's a little bit building that conference back up with the public, which is really the end result here, so the public knows we're spending their money wisely, whether it's the council or the Board of Education or both. So I think, again, I just think we have to give a little direction, and I don't know if we can do that tonight, but I think, John, I don't know if I refer to you and having some basic questions we can put in an RFP, so we craft the RFP, a little tighter. I just don't think we want it open-ended. That's just my opinion. Thanks.
Well, open-ended, I didn't want to do open-ended. I wanted to tell them what the problem was and let them decide the best way to find what happened. The minute we start telling them how to do it, then we're creating obstacles. So we tell them the Board of Education ran $10 million short, or whatever the number is, and they can't, by state law, carry over. And, last year they were 6.5 million short in June. When they transferred their budget, they were 0. And then in October, they were 6.5 million short again. These are all the rumors that people are posting all over. And half of them have no idea what they're talking about. So I don't want to lead an audit. I want to tell them what we know for sure. We know the Board of Education was short. Okay, now whether they choose the number, and this is their choice, 10 million, because this is to help them too, so they don't get back into it, or is the number 5.9 million? I don't know. We're going to find out tonight how they ended up. But if it was 10 million, what happened if they didn't get the 4 million, like you said? They'd be in serious trouble still.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, but I mean, we have to give a little bit of direction. That's all I'm saying. The issue, they're gonna see the issue. We're asking for the audit. So I don't know, I mean, we certainly can define the issue, but we also have to define the parameters a little bit. I'm not saying we're trying to hamstrung them, but we have to have a little bit of parameter to be able to give them so they can get to the issue that you're talking about and say, okay, why were they, whatever the number was, short, and then it's documented, then, again, that's all I'm saying is I think we have to give a little direction, I guess is what I'm saying.
So with consensus tonight, we can ask Chris to work with John Wilcox and the board finance director, if you guys feel that's necessary, or if John feels it's necessary, and Andy, and put together an RFP that they all feel is going to come up with the answers we're looking for, because every single person in this room knows what we're looking for. And, Andy, the new superintendent, can join you. That's between the two of you, however you want to work it out. So come September, our first meeting in September, we have a rough draft emailed to us. We've had time to challenge questions, and hopefully we can vote at that point to send out the RFP, and let's get some professionals in the building and move forward with it. That's all I'm trying to do, is save us 3 more weeks. We all know how fast time flies, so that's all I'm looking for consensus to do is, let's start working on the RFP, and it's not a quote, because once we
Right.
lock it in with these companies, then we can get the quotes and move forward. So under those terms, do we have consensus? Jim?
Yeah,
You-
definitely.
John?
Yes, from our side, absolutely. I just want to clarification of something. So when we talk about things like communication, chain of command process, in terms of an audit that looks at those things, that's significantly different in its nature than a financial audit. I mean, the question here is financial. And once we understand that, I think then we should then we can look at some of these other things. But when you start talking about process-related things, this isn't necessarily again, not making any assumptions, but those are 2 very different projects when you look at how we operate internally and amongst ourselves versus a pure numeric financial audit where they are looking at accounts, what money goes in, what money goes out, how things are attributed, how P&Ls are put together. That's a very different ask than how are we communicating with the Board of Ed respectfully? When do we get, what triggers the...
I wasn't suggesting.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that you
Totally
were, and that's
separate.
why I wasn't sure what we were going to ask for. But I think if we stick to, we need to just have a financial analysis audit, whatever you want to call it, of the problem and and have someone just look at that. I think that's where we are here. Okay.
I agree, and
Thanks.
I think, Mike, is once we find the solution or the answers, moving forward by having that open communication, if there is a problem, we work together to resolve it. Because me personally, I don't think this is a 2-year problem. I think this is something that's been practiced on the Board of Education for many, many, many years, and it just finally came to a head, and they weren't able to get out from underneath it. So there is no blame game here. And I will say it again. I believe in my heart that there is 0 corruption suspected at all. I don't believe anybody did anything ill will. I just think it caught up over time, and we have to prevent it from happening again, whether it's 5 years or 10 years from now. And that's what the audit's going to say is to the board, sit down with them and say, look, you can't do it this way or do it this way, and everything works. And we resolve the issue, and then moving forward, having an open dialogue with them on a quarterly basis or whatever, working together. We are one town. So we have consensus, Chris, so if you can work on that before the next council meeting. Thank you, everyone. Charlotte, you have anything you want to add to that?
I just had a couple of questions. Back in May, when this whole thing kind of started with the audit, you had mentioned, and some other counselors had mentioned, that it was a joint board and town audit. So is it solely the board that you're auditing, or are we auditing both together, since a lot of our processes go through the town, and obviously you guys still hold part of our money there anyways for other things that we have? So is it going to be a whole as a collective kind of a thing? Because then I think in an audit, and some of the ones that I've seen, it does at the end say like what the suggestions are, and there may be suggestions for better streamlined between the town and the board. So I was just wondering, is it just, you're focusing on just the board, or is it the town as a whole? And for what years, I guess?
So I think it goes back to, like I said, if the auditors find that there's a problem in that process between the town and the board, they're going to discover it. And again, the town of Enfield is audited every single year. The Board of Education has a very minute audit, which is done through the town's audit. So this is more of, it's time the board actually has an audit, and we're still not auditing the whole thing. We're going to let them decide, where do you need to dig? And you guys know that better than we do, and how did this happen? And I think it's going to be pretty simple answers. You know, the grants, like Mike said, I can't imagine trying to budget the way you guys budget when you're waiting on a $4 million grant to come in from the state of Connecticut, and you don't get the money till after the school year's over. Well, how do you spend it then? If you don't, encumber that money, and then the state, we know, has changed their mind on certain things. What is the proper way to do this? Because we all can't spend our yearly budget anticipating on a Christmas bonus. We don't know what we got. And that's not fair to you guys. It's not. So what do we got to do to change this practice? I mean, there's got to be an answer. How do other towns do it? I don't know. So let's find out. And, do we have to put money in an account just as a contingency above and beyond what we do to cover grants that the state may not cover? I don't have the answer. Right. But so the answer to your question, Charlotte, is right now. What's that, John?
I didn't realize I was talking so loud, but that would be smart to have an escrow of anticipated revenue that, they could tap into, like a line of credit that they could tap into until the money's come, or things like that. But sorry, I didn't realize I was speaking so loud.
We'll see, right, we'll see what the auditors end up saying. So right now, we're going to focus on the forensic piece of it, not a full audit of the Board of Ed. It is just to address, how did this happen?
Okay.
And, for that amount of money, and come up with the answers. So your physical education budget, I don't see we need to go and do a full forensic audit on that. Same with the cafeteria, unless they see some sort of a connection.
Yeah, so I guess maybe next time we have another joint meeting, which I would agree with Councilor Ludwig, should probably be monthly, because we have to give one anyways next month per the MOU anyways. But I think next time, when Lorena is back from her vacation and we're into school year, I think it would be good for her to just explain what she goes through in the audit process, so that everybody knows, what we do give for information for that.
And that's why I would like her. She's your financial person.
Yeah, she's on vacation,
Right.
so.
I would like her very much to be part
Yes.
of putting together the RFP.
Yes, yep.
Because she may have issues that she needs help with. So let's work together.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
this isn't,
Yep.
we're coming after you, you're coming after us. This is something happened, we're working as a town to make sure it doesn't happen again for the people.
Right, and then we could probably get some efficiencies out of it that might streamline things better too. So
Yep.
that's always a good thing. I'm
That's
good.
it?
Yep, that's all I had.
Tina, anything?
No, I'd like to see, the only thing I'll add is when you're talking about an escrow, I think it's probably good to see like those entitlement grants that we know we're gonna get, but that we only get, so many times a year, to understand how that process goes and then how the town would wanna see us handle those. Because we know we're getting them, except that we get them in pieces. And sometimes, like you said, we get them after the close of the book. So I think a conversation on that would be very helpful for everybody, because they're not grants that, they're grants that we know that are coming for sure, guaranteed.
And see, like, that's one of the biggest questions I have is the state of Connecticut, who tells you you have to be whole at the end of the year, can owe you millions of dollars when the end of the year is up. You can't do it both ways. So, I mean, these are things that really need to be resolved, because Enfield's not the only town that has this problem. And when we get a commitment from whoever on a grant, what are the, what ways can they actually say, you know what, we're not doing it now? The rumor special education, 100%, 70%, and from what I see, the number changes every single year. That's not consistency. How do you budget that way? So, I mean, Andy, you went above and beyond this year budgeting, just so cautious, and I hope it works out the way you're anticipating. Fingers crossed, but we won't know. It's like the sewer this year. We'll see what happens as the year progresses.
Yeah, I definitely think talking about the grants is important. Like I said, there's some we know that we're getting, they're federal based on our student population. Some are from the state that there's no wiggle room on, but then you do have these other grants that do supply a large sum of money that it depends on what's going on with the legislature. And then there's also needs to be an understanding of what we applied for, which we may or may not get, and when it will be up, that it's not something that it's long-term based on our student population.
So all of your grants that you apply for, I'm going to say all right now, I'm under the assumption that we're going to give you $10 million for X. There's always an X attached to every single grant you get, correct? So it's not like you can take that money and use it for other things. You have to really pre-fund whatever that is until the grant comes in. And if it don't come in, the money's spent. That's a huge problem, because we're putting out cash we're anticipating on getting back, that when we get it back, we can fund other things like our bus contract. So these are huge, huge problems that I think we really need to get to the bottom of. And how do you guys address it? I mean, when you start, or if you have any comments, I mean, I'm wide open, but these are the things working with the auditor. I think Charlotte and Tina and Andy and Steve, you're going to have to explain, well, this is why we did this, because we don't have the money to fund this whole program all year. So we held off on the busing to fund that, knowing the grant was coming in, and then it didn't come in. Figure it out. Let them figure out how it, because I don't have those answers. So, but that's all I have. Or it wasn't even me, it was Tina. Sorry. All set, Tina? Anybody else? Amanda? Sure.
Thanks. Sorry, this is an interesting format, so I appreciate you welcoming me to the table. I think just a couple of things that I think is important, just to piggyback on comments, Tina. I think those were helpful questions. Thank you, Charlotte. Those were helpful as well. Since we are interconnected, knowing what the problem is, I think I'm still unsure what forensic the problem, and if we have clarity on exactly what we are talking about. So that's still a concern for me. The other issue is I think we've had lots of meetings about some of the reasons of why we're here. And so I think it would be important to set some context and some truthful information that we could report on how we close out our books and where the cost came from, because I do think that's been shared. And so I think there is some information that could be shared up front to also clarify the problem. And as far as the grants pieces, as far as any of the state grants, that is all publicly reported on EGMS. So you can look at what we are getting as far as public funds. We are awarded a grant. They are all reimbursement, so you get reimbursed after you spend it. However, once you're awarded that grant, you know you're getting those funds. So they might come after the fact, but you know what the grant award is. So that is all publicly available data. So I would encourage you to check that out as well.
Thank you. Scott, anything? No? Dr. Kalman? Jean? Janet? Okay, hearing no.
Tina's hands up.
Tina?
I mean Gina, I'm sorry.
Who? Oh, Gina, sorry. I'm looking at the board.
So I guess, have one comment in my request when we do this proposal or when we see it in another month for the resolution. I'm not positive that a forensic audit is actually what we need rather than just a regular or normal financial audit, because I think a lot of times, don't quote me on this, I think a lot of times forensic really has to deal with sort of a legal or a court proceeding or the possibility or worry that some sort of wrongdoing, fraud, withholding, hiding, anything happened. So what I would ask for is that the RFP say something like forensic or financial. I would like it not to say forensic, period, or regular, normal financial. So they can tell us which one we fall in.
Couldn't agree with you more. Like I said, I don't have the answers, so.
What we'll do from listening to everybody in the comments were very instructive. I'll work with John. I'll have him talk to our auditor, because as you said, they know the terminology, they know how to tell us what we're trying to articulate. And I share your sentiment about forensic. It may not be what the term is. It's really, I think as the mayor said and everybody else, we're looking at this more to go in and find out what happened, and to Mike's point, come up with recommendations to avoid it in the future. So whatever they want to determine, I'll talk to John, we'll look at the RFP we put out for the town. I think we can tweak it. We all know what some of the issues, and I think Amanda's right. I think sometimes we know, but we don't know. We all know, but none of us, if I said to all of you, write down your 3 concerns to be looked at in the forensic, I think they'd be close, but there might be some differences in it. But I think what we need to do is tell them the story. They'll know, they'll be aware, there's enough news articles too that have sort of encapsulated it. Talk to John, get it down, but I like what Councilor Santinello said and others. I think the top 3 groups, if we get that many, hopefully, we should bring them in and talk to them and ask these questions and let them guide us to say, all right, now we know these are the main issues and this is the best way. We can use most of what you did in the town audit, because to your point, Charlotte, we could have some contribution in the confusion. So we want them to look at that to make recommendations. To Mike's point, perhaps the money that goes in, maybe you shouldn't allow payroll to it. I mean, we can benefit as well. So this is all being done in the spirit of cooperation, trying to come up with a good process later. But right now, we just kind of need to know what happened. But I'll talk to John. I'm not gonna wait to that meeting and give you the RFP the Friday before. John's gonna start looking at this, hopefully by the end of this weekend. We're gonna have it, and I'm gonna send it out for all of you to look at it and make a little commentary, because then when it goes, I mean, the question we ask them is gonna determine the answer we get back, so we better be darn sure that we're asking the right question, or at least the one that most of us want answered. And I think it won't be that hard. I'll talk to John, that's why he's here listening. We'll talk to our auditors, get some guidance. We'll send that out in the next week or two, so we come back in that first meeting in September. We don't need to discuss much, we just need to pass the resolution and get going.
Correct. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all, this was very informative.
All set? Everybody good with that? All right, moving on. Board of Ed fiscal year 23-24 status update and review.
Okay, so I am gonna have Andy give a little report on fiscal year end and where we are now. I think you'll be pleasantly pleased.
Thank you, Charlotte. First of all, I don't think I publicly had a chance since the craziness of June just to thank the council for what you did for the Board of Ed. I know politically, personally, I know a lot of you took a big hit to do that, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the students and staff at Enfield Public Schools. Also, Lorena, our business manager, is on vacation, so if you ask me granular details, I'm just telling you I will not know, but I promise you I'll write anything down that you ask me that I don't know, and I will get back to you. I was told that this is more of a general overview, so hopefully that's what you're expecting. So I will give you a general overview where we are. Item 3 and 4 kind of go together, so Mayor Nelson, are you okay if I kind of read something, and it's going to kind of mix together?
Absolutely.
It almost has to.
Yep.
Okay. So if it's okay, I'm just going to read something so I don't forget anything. So let me just talk about the 2024 fiscal year, which will be kind of quick. The business manager was able to close out the 2024 fiscal year last week. All bills and services have been paid in full. All monies that were owed to the district have been received. So we have a clean sheet for 2024. Going into 2025, we have a clean sheet. We also have what we call carryover or contingency money, which if you're okay, I'll kind of talk about now because that's really the 25. As we close the 2024 year, we were able to start the process of saving for a reserve for not only this current fiscal year of 2025, but also hopefully for the 2026 budget. When I proposed the budget in June and we cut $9.5 million for that fiscal year, for this fiscal year, sorry, I felt it wasn't the best, but I was able to somehow manage to carry over $200,000. So roughly $200,000. It wasn't enough for any major contingencies, but really if I cut more at that point, I don't know if we could have opened in September. So that was as far as I honestly could go. $200,000 was left over, but I knew traditionally we start getting savings over the summer. Fortunately, we have quite a bit. During the end of June and all summer, you're probably not too shocked at this, we've been having very large numbers of staff leave the district. Although very unfortunate to lose all this talent, it has allowed us to recall several teachers to bring back, and also administrators that have opened up a position. It's kind of hard to quantify, but if you remember, I talked about we cut several administrators, and in their contract, they have salary protection for 1 full year. So they get an administrative salary as a teacher. So we had quite a few. If you remember, I cut the district equally, so the same number of percentage-wise administrators to teachers to all staff. So that was a pretty big budget line item that we really weren't going to see saved till next budget year when they came off the books. What happened was, though, is as administrators also looked for jobs, and we had quite a few, we were able to what's called recall those rifted administrators back into their administrative role, which then allowed us to call back a teacher so we backfilled it. So if you had a $120,000 administrator, we were able to call back a $60,000 teacher, and we're able to do that quite a few times. You can start to see the savings started to increase. On top of that, we also could reduce the budget line item for workers' compensation. So all that was budgeted in. So when I put the budget together, every single teacher, administrator, para, behavioral tech, we all have to budget in workers' compensation. So we were able to start putting that money back in. Also, we have a line item called Open Choice. That's our school choice program. That's students, our students that we get from Hartford. There's a money attachment to that by the number of students we get. We've always done our best to try to conserve as much of that money at the end of the year for any type of contingency. So we did have some of that money left over as well. So with all of that said, therefore, we currently have a reserve of $494,640.69. And this will be for any contingencies this fiscal year. We're going to hold that money in the open choice line item for now. When Mr. Macchio comes in, he'll be able to take full control and move that where he feels is best. The reason we're going to keep it in there for now, it allows the business manager to move this money within the budget as needed for line item transfers. It gives us that ability to do that. With this $496.64, $640, it does not account for the $275,000 that the state of Connecticut promised us at the end of June. I think everyone understands that at the end of June, the state came out and they granted us $275,000. So as you know, Enfield was just one of 2 districts to receive end-of-year money due to the state's investigation and how we were not funded properly as an alliance district. I have not added this money to the 496 because I want to make certain we receive this money. So I'm being ultra conservative here. I think we've had enough promises from the state that did not pan out, so I'm going to be conservative, like I said. We have applied for this money as directed by the State Department of Education through the Alliance Grant Portal. That's the vehicle to get the money. This money is funded through the Alliance Grant and is leftover money from the state's ARP and ESSER COVID money. I have received confirmation that they received the application, and I'm waiting to receive this money. We applied to use this money through the academic side of the Alliance Grant, and specifically we'll use the money to cover the following. One, a program called Into Reading. That's our new reading program, which, as an aside, is another unfunded mandate. For this fiscal year, we budgeted $149,601, and that's what we asked for that. Two, it's going to fund a math program called Ready Math. It's our K through 6 math program. So we'll use the remaining $132,038 to help pay for this program. This will leave the district to only have to pay $6,639 of a remaining balance for this program. So once we receive these funds, and I've been promised it's going to happen by the end of August, we can add the $275,000 to our choice line item. That's where it will go. So we've already paid for those programs, so this money will come in, and we're just reimbursing ourselves. And theoretically, we will have $769,640,000 in contingency money to help pay for any unexpected issues this year. And our hope is to help with the 25-26 budget proposal. So some areas we're watching closely, and I know this isn't going to be a surprise. Obviously, special education. So not to sound like a broken record, but special education is the most watched line item we have. From July 1st to today, Enfield Public Schools has received 23 new special education students. Of those 23, one came to us already in an outplacement setting, roughly $150,000. We have 8 more preschoolers registering for STO as we speak, and those 8 have IEPs. Therefore, we're going to start the year, and assuming we don't get any more, which is probably a bad assumption, but if the year were to start today, we're starting with 979 students with IEPs. I asked the special education director. She said that's roughly where we were last year as well. So if we can somehow manage to keep that number in that ballpark. We ended the year with over 1,200. So you can see that from the beginning of the year to the end of the year was that massive influx of students that we received. But if that is the new trajectory, we have budgeted for that. We're ready for that. If it's more than that, then that's where that choice money is going to come in to start moving for line items. Another budget consideration, and Steve and I were actually just talking about this today over the phone, is special education staff. Just simply put, there's a major shortage across the state for special education staff. The most critical position is school psychologists. As of now, there are 40 openings for this positions in the state, and there truly is only a handful of candidates. They're just not out there. So what this does is it forces us to pay for outside agencies to provide these legal services for us. It's very expensive, but they're legally obligated. We do not have a choice. It's the same with OT. It's the same with PT. It's the same for other critical services for special education. Transportation is also associated with special education. So again, I don't want to keep beating that horn, but it's just something as a governing body, we'll watch closely. We'll keep everyone informed where we are with our numbers, where we are with our finances with that. But that's where we stand. I hope as a board and as a council, you see some optimism with this, that we do have a contingency, actually almost 1% right now of our operating budget. My goal, and I know when Steve shows up, if we could get 2%, I really is our goal this year to get 2% to do a budget presentation for the board come the winter. So that's our proposal. Again, I don't have specific minute details, but that is your overview. Thank you.
So, Andy, on the money from the state of Connecticut, you've applied for it. Have you received anything from the state saying that you were accepted for this money?
The only thing I received was confirmation that they received the application, and someone would be getting back to us to let us know whether we need to modify it, change it, or maybe that money doesn't work for this particular program. But it fits completely with the grant application that we applied for. Again, probably wrong thing to say, I do not expect any issues with this $275,000. It's just time and waiting to get it.
Right. And so you're being very cautious by not adding it to anything. We've already pre-funded these programs, which, again, you and I have had a lot of conversations with Charlotte, and you were very cautious this year. So the Board of Education now, you would say, as of right now, you didn't get the grant or you did get the grant? I mean, would you be counting on this? I hear you're saying no, and you're shaking your head no. Last year.
Charlotte's the boss, so no.
Right. Last year, would you guys have counted on this money before everything came down? You know, is this, you're doing things totally different now.
I had no, my job, my real job has nothing to do with the budget, so I don't feel comfortable answering that at all. I'm sorry.
Tina, Charlotte, I mean, would you have, you know, because you've gotten the letters from your state rep and Susan Bysowitz that, yes, this is good, but we don't have the money. We don't even have really a commitment from them saying, here you go, you're accepted, the check's in the mail. So would you have said you had this money last year and used it, and then we get ourselves in a situation when we don't get it? I mean, is this a new practice, what Andy's doing, is what I'm trying to get at, I guess?
It's not a new practice. I would say because of what we have seen on how things have worked, as if they don't give you a response and they just say we received it, that tells me they received it and they're thinking about it. That still tells me we're not getting it yet. We're not getting it until they send us a letter or an email that says you're getting this Alliance money.
From the state
From
of
the state.
Connecticut, not from the state reps, or, because we know that
I want it back
didn't
from
work
the
out too good
department
for
that we
us.
sent it to.
Right, this is very formal. It's through a grant process. We'll get an email, and then the state actually transfers the money through us through that whole grant portal. Yep.
Right, and I appreciate you trying to rebuild some of the 2% carryover for contingencies, because that is huge. I remember when we put that in effect, and it's something you guys really have to have, and it's hard to do, like I said, so. Go ahead.
Do you want me to answer? I would say that this is the first time that board members have been that close to a grant process. So we've never been this close to grant applications before. But I've always said it was such a learning process with the state of Connecticut that we have no choice but to change and always play it safe, because there is no trust there. We cannot bank on anything they're telling us until that money comes in the door. That's my take on it.
I agree, and that's why I said this audit is a learning curve for all of us. You know, we may learn too on things. Go ahead, Mike.
Exactly the point, right? Now, the board needs to be different. Maybe you have a resolution on the board floor where you never had it before. Because you're right, you just can't, until you get the money, I'm sorry, it's paper money. It's not real. And you can't budget that way. So that's part of what you just talked about, changing your policy, even if it's now you're getting into things, maybe you call it micromanagement, but it has to be, because you got to be able to make sure before you start spending money you get it. And again, Andy, I want to say this to you, and I hope folks don't take this the wrong way. Hearing you say the word conservative, it makes it all worth it for me, because again, what a great word. And to your credit, look, you took a situation, you had no choice. There was a lot of things going on. In my opinion, you handled it professionally. And I know it was hard. But just what you're saying, just what you gave, I'm sorry, and I want to be completely straightforward. I don't watch all the board meetings. I certainly don't go, don't know what you're doing in your finance committees, but I've been there. This is the detail that you just gave that the public should hear. You don't have to get into the weeds, you move this little line item, but it's exactly what the point of this is. So we're not saying, okay, it's 4 million, someone's guessing it's 4 million, it's 6 million, it's 2.3 million, whatever. That's for me, I appreciate this, because if you want to be informed, pay attention. And it's our job to let people know, here's what's going on. And to your credit, it sounds like you changed, and you have to change, because you already got burnt. And look, again, it has nothing to do with your party affiliation. The state doesn't have to live by the same rules that we have to live by. And people need to understand that. And so when you budget and you're saying it's, okay, I'm relying on the state, and I'm not banging the state, but they don't have to live by the same procedures that we have to live by. And I think that's one of the things that you come out of this. And I agree with you. Look, I'll just say, any line of work I've been in, we always have a buffer. And I know some people say, you're holding, but you always got to have a buffer, and you always got to say, what if this goes wrong? And I think that's, in my opinion, that's the best way to budget. And I appreciate you talking that way so the public sees that we're trying to change, because I think it's very important, because you have to have a buffer, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, even more so now than ever in our history. Tomorrow could be completely different than today. And if you think, oh, well, it's always worked that way, and so we're going to get the money, and then 2 months from now, you like you said, say it was 2.7 million, and you went out and spent 2.7 million. 2 months from now, you don't get the 2.7. You're in the same situation you were last year. And then at some point, right, Lucy pulls the football every time you run up. At some point, you got to do something different, right? So I appreciate it. And again, this is exactly, I think, why this is so important to have these meetings. Even if it's for 10 minutes, we say everything is great, here's our numbers, boom, we're out of here. Because we can't go into next budget season, and if you're, whether with us or you, that has an issue, and then all of a sudden we act like we didn't know about it. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Councilman Crisati.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, to everybody that's on the Board of Ed, welcome, Mr. Macchio, Superintendent, and Assistant Superintendent Longi. Once again, I have to commend everybody for a job well done in terms of building up that contingency. I think it's very important to hear what you stated today in regard to the staff and the administration, other people leaving the district, you're recalling people, you're saving money, how you explained to us about the reduced with the workman's compensation budget. All of this is very important. I don't think there's anybody that's in this room right now that fully understands how these grants are taking place. All the points that everybody has made tonight has been spot on. We're not looking at, placing blame on somebody. When these grants come in, and I know, they're stated, they're online, you only get portions of these grants coming in, and it's very difficult to have a budget. And I know that Board of Ed budgets are pretty much done holistically in terms of, and I know that you're trying to change things up, and I get that. Knowing that we're going to be getting into our audit, financial aspect, where maybe we can find better ways to do things. To hear we had since the beginning of, from June to now, 23 new special ed students. I guess my question is, did we lose any special ed students? And if we did, how many?
Just through graduation.
Just through graduation?
Right, so that's pretty normal. That's a cycle. So we'll have a number at the end of June. We report that to the state, and then we have graduation, of course, and we lose the senior class. And then there might be some movement then, but since July, no, the number has only increased, not decreased.
Right, okay. Well, that's good. Well, to know that we have close to 1,000 students with IEPs is something that we really have to be aware of, and that's a big cost. But once again, to get to where you're at right now of close to almost $500,000 in reserve, kudos to you and everybody that's been doing it. I know that, a lot of pressure has been put on our Board of Ed, and say, what went wrong? What went wrong? I just think that it was an accumulation of certain things that have taken place, and hopefully that we find it and get to where we can say that this isn't going to happen again to us. But I just, in my own opinion, this is what I think, took place. And I don't think there's a finger pointing at anybody. Everybody comes in, they do their job. the financial, I know Lorena does a great job, and, there were people finger pointing, and I don't think that's fair. But once again, in regard to tonight, you're given the update on the 23 through current and even to 26. I'm very impressed at the work that has been done at this point in time. And, it is good to get together and meet and, put things out on the table so there's no hidden surprises that eventually we did have. So that's all I have to say. But I think this is good. This is healthy for us.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Councilman Santinella.
So, Mr. Macchio, if I could just put you on the spot for a second. Can I do that? So you come from a different school district. There's 158 school districts or 160 school districts in the state of Connecticut. In Stafford, when you were expecting grant money, what did Stafford do with your budget? How did you deal with expected money from the state?
First of all, thank you very much for putting me on the spot before I'm officially on the job.
With an easy question, I assume.
Right? Very easy question with many multiple parts to it. It largely depended on the grant, to be honest with you. Depending on the grant, it was budgeted in as an offset within our budget. We had other grants that we knew, I think you heard guaranteed would be coming in, so those were just built right in, and we knew we were going to be getting that money, so it was depended on. Other grants that we applied for, we would wait for the application process to finish. I'm going to get used to that. In EGMS, there's a number of emails that you'll receive. First of all, that they received it, that the State Department approved it, because you always have a liaison with the State Department who's checking over to make sure your grant is written properly. And then, really, the big one is when you get the grant award letter, and that's the fiscal approved letter. And at that point, we spend. So we generally wait until we have that letter that comes in before we would spend it. But there's other grants that we know are coming, and we would actually be pre-spending, because the State Department is wonderful in the fact that they love you to spend your money first, and then you go and ask for them to send it back. It's a very reverse process. They would much rather not give you the money and have you then need to return it, because 166 municipalities, they're going to be chasing after a lot of municipalities to get back their money. So instead, you spend your money and then you ask them to reimburse you. They've never had to give up their money. So I believe Mr. Ludwig said that, they're allowed to play by a different set of rules, and I 100% would echo those remarks. They are. We need to build our budgets in a way that are within their rules, but yet protect us from issues like this that occur. So it's not an easy answer. It depends on the grant.
Right, and I appreciate the answer to that. And I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but look, we live in a bubble here, right? I mean, we know Enfield, and we just assume, we know how we do things, and there's an opportunity with somebody who's not from here, who's been an administrator for a while, and can bring that experience. So that I think it's important for us to understand that, you spent money in your district like probably all 160 other districts do, because that's what they're forced to do. And as a matter of practice, that's how boards of ed operate, and they're forced to operate that way. So the idea and the validation, frankly, that my asking that question gave me is that, we weren't doing things that is foreign or different than the way other boards are required to manage their books of business. So I appreciate that. Mr. Longi, I have to ask, how many teachers left the district? You mentioned staff leaving. Can you kind of quantify that? And
I don't have the exact number.
Okay.
I can get it for you, though.
All right. Thank you. That's okay. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Thank you, John. Councilman Hendrickson.
First, I want to say, Andy, thank you for your gratitude that you showed earlier on, and I will give you some gratitude back. You had a tough job, and you got through it, and we're moving forward, and that's the biggest thing that we've been pushing for, to get through this and move on to bigger and better things, hopefully. And I want to echo that I love this status report. I think it's important for everyone to see, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Tina?
One of the things I think that would be important for the Board of Ed to give to the town council, whether it be a monthly basis or whatnot, is if there were any increases in the IEPs. I also think it's important to keep track of what we're paying on those outside services, because we are paying so much more than we would pay an on-staff person. So when it comes to the budget next year, we want to look at that versus what it would cost us to actually be able to offer that employee to be here with us, because I think that there's going to be savings. So I think keeping you guys informed about the number of IEPs, outplacements we get, how much we're spending on those outside services, even if it is within a threshold of contingency and that we wouldn't have to go to you, I still think it's an important factor for you guys to know. Because it would be great to be able to have that staff in-house, because they would know the kids better, but it's also a huge cost savings. So that's one of the things, I think I recommended that at our last meeting, that we give you monthly special ed updates.
So even if you could, without getting into the child's name or personal file, but break it down into what the special needs are, because I know me and Councilman Ludwig have been discussing with Charlotte, and I believe you too, Tina, the expansion of the Eagle Academy.
Right.
So if you could break down that list that you're talking about, so we know if we expanded the Eagle Academy by, say, 100 students, could we actually deal with all 100 students, or would we still have to outsource a certain group of students? And I don't know. Go ahead, Andy.
There's certain, it would be the majority, for sure. 100, it's not just Enfield students, we're now a regional hub. And if we were able to get access to a building, we could do it. We've proven we can do it. We're good at that. There are students, though, that the outplacement is so severe that usually those students are actually, it's a full-time facility. We wouldn't have the preparation for that. And probably it wouldn't be fiscally make sense because it's such a small number. But right now, there's 25 students with IEPs outplaced that we can't accommodate at Eagle Academy. So those 25, so let's say maybe 5 couldn't, that's 20 that could come back at $100,000, $150,000 a piece that we could do in-house if we had the right facility. And then there's other things like DCF. We have no control over this. DCF just placed 3 students with IEPs to other schools outside of Enfield. We're on the tab for transportation. So there's tentacles, right? There's tentacles to this everywhere. That's why special education's very, very difficult to keep track of. And that's why I think these reports, like Tina said, are really important. I don't want to be the only one holding on to this stress of, gosh, it's good that we all kind of share this and figure this out. So I appreciate it.
Right.
That was one of my suggestions for this upcoming budget cycle.
Sorry.
That was just one of my suggestions for this upcoming budget cycle, to
Well, that's a
report
big
that
one,
to you guys.
because, I mean, we've been kind of kicking the can down the road on Nathan Hale. You know, can we do something with it or not? And then with the school modernization, you know, we're on board, but again, it's something we got to do. We got to move forward here. And, you know, the school modernization's kind of been stagnant for a while. You know, the council needs to set a number on what we're willing to fund. And then we've got to form, you know, the pre-ref committee. These are the terms. This is the money you have to use. Spend it wisely. So, go ahead, Mike.
So on that, you know, and I think, Tina, you're on to something. I think, again, explaining to people, Andy, to what you just said, look, when we have to outplace, roughly it's $100,000. I know there's averages. That's $2.5 million that, again, we don't have control over. When you're talking about, part of this is educating the public, right? Them understanding that. And the other piece, too, I think is so important for the board, and I said this a number of times, is that the money that we're not, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here or blaming anybody, but the simple fact is we're not 100% funded on special ed, and that number needs to be an estimate somewheres. So again, if we have 1,000 kids, we're paid at 70% versus 100, 70% of 40%. That's a real number, and it's huge. And that's what the public needs to understand. So when we're going through this, and Andy, you're right. We going back to why we did Eagle Academy. It wasn't just about what we're talking about, the money, why now we can bring in other kids from other towns so we can make it cost neutral. It was about keeping our own kids in town. Again, because you know what? We are pretty territorial here in Enfield. We don't want our kids going elsewhere. So we're very, I'm very territorial. And the other point too is, remember, we had a federal program that wasn't providing the same level of education that 100 yards down the street was. And now every child in Enfield gets the same access to education. We're one of the few towns that actually can brag about that. We never talk about it. We never say we should be putting that on everything we do, because you hear it all across the nation, and we're actually achieving it and achieved it. But the point is understanding simply, hey, here's what we should be getting. When we're talking about grants and everything else, reviews around, I thought it was roughly around $10 million that we're not getting, that again, they're supposed to be funding for special education. So that puts it in perspective to the mayor's point, when we're trying to go, okay, we need to expand Eagle Academy. Why? This is why. Because financially it makes sense for the town and for the board. We keep our kids in Enfield where they belong, and then now to your point, we're a regional hub. So other towns are having that same cost that need to send it somewhere else. And the other good news is kids aren't on buses all day. I mean, you're talking about transportation. I remember when we kept a few people back that were able to stay in Enfield, a couple of those children were going to Willimantic. Imagine at that age going all the way to Willimantic nothing against Willimantic, great town, but they're going from Enfield to Willimantic. That's what brings this out, is that these little nuances that are so important for people to understand when we're talking about 1,000, hey, here's the numbers and why we're trying to manage it. And to the mayor's point, why we want to expand the Eagle Academy. Maybe it is Nahale, maybe it's somewhere else. That these are so important discussions, because to your point, we do it better than anyone else when it comes to special education. So then why shouldn't we then lead our region? But once people understand the numbers, and I think we've gotten a little bit about through the budget, we were talking so many different numbers. Hey, as part of hey, look, we should be getting X for these 1,000 children. We're getting Y, and that's part of the reason why our budget is stressed, right? There's stress on your budget because you're getting underfunded a significant amount of money. And that's what people need. And you're not placing blame, but it's the reality of how it works. So then when everyone's arguing with us that we need to fund more, and it turns into this, we're arguing with each other. Well, there's a big piece, there's an elephant in the room that we talk about it, but we don't put the real number or guesstimate on the page. So people say, $1,000 and it's only funded it's 40%, 70% of 40% is actually X. And when they see it's millions of dollars, maybe that says, maybe we'll start putting some pressure on the state of Connecticut to do what they're supposed to be doing, instead of us arguing with each other, hey, what's the definition, all this other stuff. I'm just saying, I think that's so important. I appreciate you doing that. If that could be part of it, I really think the public needs to understand it, because it's such a huge piece, the funding that you don't get, that then falls on us. Then we got to go to the local taxpayer and say, look, you don't want your taxes to go up. Here's one of the big things we're going to have to fight for. So thank you. Session, and people should view it that way.
Mayor Nelson, can I just respond to him quickly?
Absolutely.
I just want you to know that the benefit of everything you said at the Eagle Academy, but for people to understand that when they're in Eagle Academy and we can transition them back to one of our schools, it can be done, where they start half days, and they make that transition a lot easier. Also, even if they're not being able to be transitioned, they participate in our extracurricular activities, which I think is important just for the students and the families.
One individual who was able to play football.
Yep.
Great stuff.
So there's just good all the way around academically as well.
Shirley?
So to switch gears just a little bit, sorry. Part of the budget issue that we had with budgeting was insurance costs. because we were not anticipating that large of a jump. So I was hoping, and I've asked a couple of times, and I know it probably gets lost in a million things going on, but if we could have another joint insurance committee meeting, so we could go over insurance and what it looks like, what claims are, what's utilization like, that would be helpful. So it would help with our projection in the next budget year. And, you know, maybe it's time to look and go back out to bid to see, can we get it at a lower price now? Like, all those things should, I think, be investigated. I know Tina and I have been talking about it for a while. We are on the board side of that committee. I don't know who was on the council side, but I would like to do that again, so we at least can talk about it and be prepared in our budget to budget properly for it.
So I believe that falls under general governance, right?
Actually, Cindy and I were the two liaisons. I've been doing the insurance for, separate committees.
It's a separate committee, so why don't we get together
Fair,
and do
yeah.
a joint meeting
Yep.
with your leadership and the committee?
Fair.
And then whatever you guys come up with, bring it back to the board, come back to the council, or at the next, whenever,
Yeah.
joint meeting that we have, that can be one of the topics that we discuss. Again, could be beneficial for both
Agreed.
sides, huge.
If you're gonna go to bid, we need to go to bid shortly too. That's a discussion, because the timing of everything, the bid's gotta go out by the fall.
Well, then let's get the
Yeah.
committee together.
Yeah,
Soon.
regular subcommittee like any other subcommittee.
Right, but let's schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
Right, so, all right, so you'll work with Chris
Yeah.
and Charlotte
Yeah.
and get it done.
Thanks.
Anything else? Anybody else? Councilman Ongire.
I'd just like to welcome Mr., how do you say your last name? Macchio? Yeah, welcome to Enfield, and I wish you a smooth transition in your new position. I'm in favor of requesting the RFP, whether it's a regular audit or if we do the forensic. They both can be on there. Thank you, Andy, for all your comments and your numbers. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone taking time out of their summer to come here. Everyone's so busy. And I love this open dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Amanda?
There, so I'll join. Thank you. I also enjoy this open dialogue. I think joint meetings are really important and agree with transparency. But I will share as a board member and as a parent, I think much of our issues with our budget is lack of investment in public education. So I would hope that either as part of our board meetings or as part of these joint meetings, we do hear about the impacts of the cuts and kind of how that has impacted programming and services. This goes to my second point. While I agree we have priority needs in special education with mandated and legislatively allocated costs, part of the reason that we have such inflated special ed needs is because we are not able to provide adequate prevention and interventions ahead of time. And many of those supports were cut with this last round of cuts. So thinking about intervention staff, support staff, class size, all of the impact of our cuts, I think it's important to not only tell the story of how we're able to save money, it's nice to hear about a reserve. As a parent, I'm selfishly saying, can you hire back some teachers so my kid's not sitting in a class with 29 other kids? So I think it's important to tell a full story and not just celebrate our numbers.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to wrap this meeting up because the funding update and review, I think you covered that also, Andy. You kind of took all three of them. So I want to wrap this up with, I personally want to thank you, Andy. You're probably the #1 superintendent, not assistant, superintendent that I've worked with in all the years I've been on the town council. You got put in a position that you didn't want to be put in, and you had to deal with something this town has never had to deal with. You stepped up, whether you wanted to or not. You were there every single time myself or the council or board asked for your assistance, and you came out on top. And I'm going to say it publicly. I've told you privately. I did support you in the superintendent role, 100%. I think you would have made a great superintendent. And I do respect your opinion and for declining the position. Steve, I don't know you. This has nothing to do with you, but this is my last opportunity to thank Andy for stepping up for the town of Enfield in the short time you've been superintendent, and I still stand by my decision. I think you would have made the right man for the job. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.